Hold on, she's going live. I'm more in.
Welcome, everyone. You guys are live.
Welcome to the Conscious Revolution Conference. We're in day 4 of the conference and of the conference of the movements, com26v.com. And today we're very excited to bring solutionaries to create a blueprint for the future of humanity to uplift our collective consciousness. So we're all bringing solutionaries from around the world to create this blueprint to increase our higher consciousness and our collective evolution. So today we have Andrew Cameron Bailey and Connie Baxter Marlowe. They are writers, filmmakers, photographers, and solutionaries in consciousness, climate, community, and country. And the country is the United States. Take it away, Connie and Andrew.
Hello, friends. It's good to be here. It's an honor. Connie?
Yeah, what a thrill. We're just so thrilled you're bringing all of humanity together for an heightened consciousness and a new blueprint for a new way of being, which is what's up. So we're just thrilled to be a part of it and to bring our gifts to it.
Yes, we are.
And what we're bringing today is Indigenous cosmology and its role in the evolution of consciousness, and especially through the evolution of the American mind, spirit, and democracy. So we're going to bring you some information and some ideas that you may not be aware of in the history of the United States, of the syntheses between the European colonists and the American Indian that gave birth to this American mind, which was completely different from the European mind, and which is in an evolutionary process, as we all know, that we have yet to become the dreams that have been dreamt for America, for the United States of America and humanity. And Andrew is from South Africa.
I'm actually British. I was born in England, but I was transplanted at the age of 3. I got to grow up among the Zulus and the monkeys, and this necklace I'm wearing is actually from the Bushmen of the Kalahari, who very few people know much about them, and if they haven't seen the film, The Gods Must Be Crazy. But they happen to be the world's oldest people, and the Australian Aborigines, therefore, are the world's perhaps second oldest people, because if indeed we humans came out of Africa, had to get to Australia, that took some time. So my personal understanding is that the Bushmen of the Kalahari are the ones who stayed behind. They did not leave Africa. They stayed there. They're still there to this day, and their wisdom is extraordinary. So point, our indigenous brothers and sisters have something to offer as we go forward on this planet, and we have tended to push their ideas and their visions aside. And we live in this extraordinary moment where here we are, finally paying attention.
Yes, and a crisis has driven us there. The climate crisis has driven us to the indigenous peoples who are the caretakers of the earth. But they're way more than that. They're the bringers of cosmic cosmology. They're the bringers of what I consider clues to the true nature of the universe, which is what our work is in consciousness. It has to do with shifting out of the old scientific paradigm into a new paradigm that unified physics and whole world view physics and many other cutting edge scientists are with scientists in this Harameen and Jude Currivan and many others are bringing proof for the Western mind that this expanded reality, the oneness and sacredness of all life is in fact scientifically provable. So we're going to go through some information about the founding of the United States and the Native American worldview and the evolution of consciousness as we see it. So my information and experiences have been with visionary Native elders of the Americas for decades. And so let's proceed on our little talk here. And we're going to share our screen.
And may I say one quick thing first? I would just like to point out that this week is the 400th anniversary of the landing of the Mayflower on these beautiful shores. Connie's ancestors were on that boat. So it's been pretty extraordinary to come here as a foreigner. I sailed a sailboat, but I got here Thanksgiving in 1969. I'm a Latter-day Pilgrim.
Latter-day Pilgrim.
But I caught up. I learned that there's this incredible story at the founding of this country that's actually been lost. And it's a very positive story. It's an intercultural relationship story that's remarkably beautiful and positive. I just wanted to say that this is the 400th anniversary of that extraordinary moment in human history, and certainly in English history. I'm an Englishman, and in the earliest of American stories.
And this is the 12th of November on November 11th, 1620, yesterday. There was the signing of the Mayflower Compact, and we'll go into that in this talk. But this is an auspicious time, 400 years, and time to shift our understanding into knowing and realizing that there were syntheses that occurred between the Native American and European colonists. And we want to say that we're looking at now the third great synthesis. There have been two in our past. So let's proceed, and we'll just give you a little cram course.
You're going to share the screen?
Yeah. So I got to share the screen.
We have a PowerPoint presentation here. Let's see if we can get the screen to share.
Yeah.
There it is.
Here it is.
Okay.
So here we go. And this is the third great synthesis, Indigenous cosmology and the evolution of consciousness. Because this nation is, in fact, it brought people from all over the world. All cultures, all religions are here in this nation. And this nation is going through a huge purging now of our shadow, of our habits of differences and the separation and scarcity. All those systems that were founded on those concepts are crumbling now, and our shadow of all that thinking that we have had in our hearts and minds, more our minds than our hearts, is being cleansed out now in our behaviors and what's going on. That's our perspective anyway. And so what we are going to do is proceed with the Hopi Prophecy that says,
when the birds fall from the sky and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come unto earth from many colors, classes, and creeds, who by their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again. They will be known as the warriors of the rainbow.
And this third great synthesis we're talking about is that when we come together as equals, as family, with the indigenous peoples of the world and all people, and we each open our hearts and our minds to the other, the melding of our gifts will bring a new perspective that is invisible at this time. This new perspective will allow us to see the path to true unity, peace, and freedom. So that's been my perspective for 30 years, ever since I came in contact with indigenous cosmology and what I saw to be the clues to the true nature of the universe. Once we align with the true nature of the universe, we will come into balance. And fortunately, science is, as I said, science is bringing us there. So first we want to explore the indigenous worldview. And I got this from a paper written by a Native person. And I'm trying to remember, it was so long ago. I don't actually have.
Who was that?
Yeah,
Oh.
okay. Anyway, it was long ago. I've been carrying this for so long. So the indigenous worldview brings a respect and reverence for all of life, an interrelatedness of all things and actions. It brings in the co-creative power of thought. And if you listen to unified physics and these new sciences, you'll see how powerful our thinking is. Concern for future aspects of present action, living in balance, concern for the common good.
And trust in a higher power, the incorporation of the metaphysical into physical reality, equality of all aspects of life, sharing, cooperation.
And guess what? It's all love. And here we've got Wallace Black Elk speaking about the fact that it's all love.
Today, we are honored to have with us Black Elk.
Don't do that.
Oh, what did I
There's
do?
no point in switching it off.
Oh,
You to each and everyone here in the television world. And it's about time we all come to focus our mind universally, because I speak from the universe of minds. And the way we're born with love, kindness, generosity, and giving. So we're born with love. So the love in itself is God, and love is mother. So mother is love, and God is love, and so on. So I think this is the way we should teach our children.
so Wallace is bringing in the loving nature of the universe. And that's what we feel drives all things. And that's the insights we've gotten from the indigenous people.
And when did you film that?
Oh, that was back in the 90s.
Back in the 90s, right? Connie's been up to this for a while.
Been up to it for a while. And that was me and Sally Ranney interviewing Wallace.
And Grandfather Wallace.
Yeah, Grandfather Wallace.
Who I never met. He passed away in 2005. And one of my regrets is I never did get to meet this amazing man, but I've learned a lot about him.
Yeah, so what we want to address is the fact that the true American dream is humanity's birthright. And once we recognize the role of the American Indian in the evolution of the United States of America, the dream for humanity carried to these shores by the early settlers of New England and Virginia will be realized, that we lead the world as exemplars in liberty, justice, and equality and abundance. Until that time, the United States, like a three-legged stool missing one of its legs, is out of balance without the Native American at the table. And what I wanted to do was talk a little bit more about the American dreams, the dreams that have
Dreams
been
plural, right?
the dreams
multiple
plural.
dreams.
And I'm just going to speak a little on that. We can start with the dream of the first peoples of the portion of Turtle Island we call North America. Deep in their knowledge and way of life is the vision of humanity living in alignment with the original instructions from the Creator, which are synonymous with the universal laws that govern all of creation. This includes all beings, animate and inanimate, which have a spirit and divine purpose. This means walking in balance, honoring the sacredness and oneness that is our essence. To achieve access to these instructions, they would go out on the hill and cry for a dream, and then would inspire the tribe to act according to the dream received. This dream would inspire the tribe to act accordingly. And then came the dream of my ancestors, the Mayflower Pilgrims, who recognized the divine speaking through the Bible, including that humanity, indicating that humanity was to relate directly to God without the intermediary of the priests and the hierarchy of the church. They defied their king, who was also the head of the Church of England, committing treason in doing so. They escaped and journeyed to this land called America, and 400 years ago today, drafted and signed a compact binding them together in a civil body politic to enact equal and just laws serving the common good. Several months after landing on these shores, they encountered a people who shared this vision of divine guidance and participatory democracy, and signed a mutual protection treaty on their first meeting in the spring of 1621, and lived in peace and friendship with them for 54 years. The resulting intercultural exchange gave birth to the American mind, spirit, and democracy. This underlying spiritual alignment with the divine was to infuse the leaders of the 13 American colonies with a trust in providence as they crafted a declaration and a constitution with principles that, with the influence of the great law of the Iroquois Confederacy, were to become the guiding documents of the nation known as the United States of America. So we've had many dreams, and I'm sure that all people listening have dreams for what this country could be and will be.
Martin Luther King had a dream.
Martin Luther King had
so
a dream.
The American dreams just keep on coming. And, you know, what is our dream right now, this day?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question.
Right now in these times. And once we understand the power of our thinking, the power of our thought with what quantum science has brought, we know we can influence the outcome and the behaviors of the collective as we move into a higher way of seeing and being. So this promise of the US of A, answering that call of that promise of those dreams, issuing the call to make it a reality, it's really totally up to us, you and me, all of us.
US?
Us, the US. So the American dream is our birthright, and we are going to manifest that. That's what's happening with this conference, is setting a blueprint so that we actualize liberty, justice, equality, and abundance for all. So let's see. So I think I'm going up. I'm going the wrong. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Hey, I'm the one who's from down under. You're supposed to know which way's up.
So here we have the third great synthesis, humanity 2.0, an evolutionary leap. Okay, so we, I keep going the wrong way. Sorry about that.
There is no wrong way, but
There is no wrong way, exactly. So we're going to go into just a bit of history that I just touched on, and that is the spiritual alignment of the founding of this country, that it was based on a God-based, creator-based, provident-based paradigm, creator-based with the Native Americans, God-based with the Mayflower Pilgrims, and providence-based with the founders of the nation. And if you look at the founding documents, the writings of the founders of this country, the 1787 founders, you'll find that they totally turned themselves over to providence. They did what they could and then let providence proceed. So maybe we just need a little more of providence guidance as we proceed in these times. So
a major part of the story begins back in England in the year 1606. In fact, the story really started at Cambridge University in the late 1500s and the 1580s. But in the year 1606, this little town, and Connie and I visited that little town. It's actually called Scrooby, which is an odd name, isn't it? Makes me think of Scrooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
But it's a gorgeous little English town, and this is where the story began. With a group of people, the Bible had been translated into English. And all of a sudden, the ministers and the priests and the churches no longer had a lock on the contents of the Bible. And the people started reading it for themselves and coming to some startling conclusions, such as, we don't need all of these bishops and all of this pomp and splendor. Let's just go back to basics. So what this group did, and they were actually being treasonous, as Connie mentioned at the time, because King James was actually the head of the church and he was the king of the country. And if you didn't do what he said, off with his head. You know that story. So they formed this covenant. A covenant is also known as a compact. It's an agreement where a group of people get together and actually craft an agreement. And this is the Scrooby Covenant of 1606 in the very middle of England. As ye Lord's free people joined themselves by a covenant of the Lord into a church estate in ye fellowship of ye gospel, to walk in all his ways, made known or to be made known to them according to their best endeavor, whatever it should cost them, the Lord assisting them.
Yeah, so you see it says the Lord's free people. And they saw through the gospel that we were to relate directly to the divine. So they said, no more Church of England. And they walked, and what they're saying is all his ways made known or to be made known. And according to their best endeavor, whatever it should cost them, the Lord assisting them. They knew that they had more to learn, that there was a world out there, more to come to them. So it's not surprising that they came in contact with the Native Americans who were spiritually aligned and opened their hearts and minds to the Native people. And what we have here is the birth of the American mind, what we're calling the first great synthesis. And they signed the Mayflower Compact, as I mentioned, in November of 1620, yesterday, November
400
11th.
years ago yesterday,
Yeah.
not quite yesterday.
Not quite yesterday, 400 years ago.
Right.
And then in 1621, in March of 1621, after a hellacious winter,
They lost half their people, died that first winter, and they did not meet the Native Americans until the spring, which is interesting. That's not the way it is currently believed, but that
Right.
in fact is the truth.
right, they met their first Native American in the spring of 1621 and signed a peace treaty, a mutual protection treaty that lasted 54 years. And in 1621, they also held what we're calling the first Thanksgiving. It was a 3-day harvest celebration between these cultures who had lost so much just prior to this celebration. We're just thinking of in terms of the grief that these people were feeling.
Well, let's make it clear that the Native people had just gone through a pandemic, literally a pandemic of a disease that is being thought to be smallpox. It was not. It was, in fact, the plague. And that's a whole long story in its own right. I've actually written a big fat book on the subject, so we can get there at some other time. But the fact is that the native people were in a state of extreme grief. And the Pilgrims, too, had just lost. Imagine, there's 102 of you, and now there's 51 left, including Connie's actual direct ancestors, with one exception, died that first winter. So I can't help just empathizing with and imagining the grief of these two groups of people who came together. And I believe they found comfort. They found safety with each other on the one hand, but they also found comfort and they found friendship. It's an extraordinary story. It is the gem at the founding of this country that's pretty much unknown.
Yeah, and Andrew's work and his research, he discovered the Tarratines War, which was a competition for the fur trade between the Micmac and the Penobscot, which spread down to the Massachusetts Confederacy and brought with it a plague. And so that plague from 1616 to 1618 was what was decimated the tribes of New England.
The coastal tribes.
The coastal tribes
Mhm.
before the Mayflower landed. So, yeah, and we've talked about this, that they both experienced extreme loss.
So let's mention that. The surviving Mayflower Pilgrims who met the Native Americans on the spring equinox of 1621 consisted of 4 adult women, 14, that's 1-4 adult men, and 34 children. That's not a very big group, and they're often described as some sort of invading army who did all these terrible things to the native people. That, my friends, is simply not true.
Yeah, and they celebrated the intercultural harvest celebration, 3 days of celebrating with 90 plus Native Americans. And here is a little description, the only description we have of that 3-day intercultural celebration that's now called the first Thanksgiving. And I'll read that to you because it's really short. Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent for men on fowling, that so we might, after a special manner, rejoice together after we had gathered the fruit of our labors. They 4 in one day killed as much fowl as, with a little help besides, served the company almost a week. At which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, which they had to do to keep their matchlocks functioning. And many of the Indians coming amongst us, and among the rest, their greatest king, Massasoit, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted. And they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and bestowed upon our governor and upon the captain and others. So this was this very special time that happened in the fall of 1621, 400 years ago, 399 years ago.
Yeah. And as we're coming up on Thanksgiving in a few weeks,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
this is an important part of the story to really understand this.
Yeah. And we can go together into our hearts again now that we understand that we have done it in the past and it's at the founding of this nation. So
in case you think we're making this stuff up, and in case you think it's all coming from white folks, here is a colleague of ours. Her name is Betty Booth Donahue. She's a Cherokee linguist, and she's the author of an incredible book called Bradford's Indian Book. I thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, and this book shows the influence of the Native Americans on Governor Bradford's his of Plymouth Plantation, which is known as the first literary piece written in
the first
America.
Literary work that was published in this country.
Yeah, in American literature.
And here's what Betty has to say. 3 little extracts there.
Yeah. She says, natives and pilgrims were as much alike as they were different. Both groups were highly religious, and they understood the power of the spoken word. The Pilgrims did not arrive with the idea of taking land from the natives. They wanted to buy it, and did. They lived in close proximity to each other. Indians lived inside the stockade and came and went at will. And this is being proven now by archaeological digs and evidence. And what else she says is they visited with each other, exchanged ideas and information and goods, and understood each other. Pilgrims viewed the natives as sentient human beings and valued their opinions as much as they feared their savagery. Well, don't we all fear all of our savageries? There was mutual respect. Had other colonies followed Plymouth, things would have been very different for natives and whites. Much suffering and loss of life and culture would have been avoided. And here we've got Edward Winslow, who wrote in his diary of the times together with the native people.
We have found the Indians very faithful in their covenant, very loving and ready to pleasure us. We often go to them, and they come to us. Some of us have been 50 miles by land in the country with them. Not only the greatest king amongst them, called Massasoit, but also all the princes and peoples round about us, have either made suit unto us, or been glad of any occasion to make peace with us, so that 7 of them at once have sent their messengers to us to that end. So that there is now great peace amongst the Indians themselves, which was not formerly, neither would have been but for us. And we for our parts walk as peaceably and safely in the wood as in the highways in England. We entertain them familiarly in our houses, and they as friendly bestowing their venison on us.
And I wouldn't mind mentioning.
We have found the Indians very faithful in their.
How do I stop? Okay. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
wanted to mention that we actually made, this is part of a film we made called Seeds of Freedom, A Vision for America, that David Cam mentioned as he was introducing to us at the beginning. And that's a little, I love watching that. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Edward Winslow's personal diary that's been published, you can access it on mayflowerhistory.com, and you can go to original sources and you can download Mort's Relation as well as Good News from New England, and you can read the words of Edward Winslow. So
On to the second great synthesis.
on to the second great synthesis. So
Mm.
that's the first great synthesis, 54 years of peace and friendship between these folks. And
how many years, about 150 years later,
yeah,
right, we have the crafting of the US Constitution and the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia
yeah,
in 1787. And that's where this coming together of a whole other group of natives with Benjamin Franklin and the actual founding fathers of this country.
yeah. So we're calling that the second great synthesis. And this is documented, it's known, it's not well known, but the Iroquois Great Law influences the United States, the formation of the United States of America. Ben Franklin's first assignment was to go and create a treaty with the Iroquois, and the 13 colonies were looking for a way to unite. And what Ben discovered was that the Iroquois had come in under this great law, and the various tribes had of different sizes and power structure had come together in this confederacy. So he was very interested in how they had done this, because all the colonies are different sizes, different thinking, different ways, and so how to do it. And he was very curious about that, and actually wrote the Albany Plan, and then the Confederation, Papers of Confederation. And so then the Iroquois were invited to the Continental Congress to advise them. And here are some drawings that illustrate that. So a great peacemaker had come to the Iroquois, and he had brought them this constitution, this great binding law.
And this was already ancient by the time Benjamin Franklin went to
Yeah.
meet with them. And it continues to this day.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Yeah,
That is-
absolutely. The Iroquois Confederacy, and it was in the 1200s. It was about the same time as the Magna Carta. And so what our focus is the evolution of consciousness of humanity. Okay, our desire to be free, our desire to move into our full human potential and our alignment with the divinity, walking that walk. And that's what this conference is about a blueprint for how do we actually do that? How do we become truly free? How do we come and act according to our conscience, like what my ancestors, what the Mayflower Pilgrims were looking for, a society based on freedom of conscience, that we could act according to our direct connection. And so that's what we're looking forward to, contributing this thinking to that blueprint for a new humanity and a new way of being. Because what the tribes of the Iroquois had been warring amongst each other for generations. And so it looked impossible for them to pull out of that way of thinking and hating and carrying forth anger and all that. And this great peacemaker brought a condolence ceremony. And that condolence ceremony has to do with going into one's trauma, going into one's fear and all the history that one's carrying and releasing it. And that's what needs to be done now as we go forward, is all of us to go into our shame, our blame, our guilt, our trauma, and release it so we can go forward into a new way of being. And so this peacemaker brought a new way of seeing. And we feel that this synthesis concept between the European colonists and the American Indian brings forth a new way of thinking, of seeing, of knowing, so that we can open our hearts and know that we have come together. We've given birth to something incredible as we came together and brought our hearts, our spirits, our thinking together. So what the great peacemaker brought was that, do you want to?
Okay, so the core teaching of the great law is peace was the law, and the law was for peace. Under the great law, 50 chiefs and clan mothers, note clan mothers, we forgot that part, were organized in a three-part system of government with executive, legislative, and judicial divisions. That sound familiar?
Yeah, so this was a participatory democracy and a legal system called the Great Law of Peace. And these peacemakers, David and Sherry and the other person, which I know his name, but I'm forgetting right this second. These great peacemakers, they're bringing forth this energy of this peacemaker to go forward together and in a new way of seeing and being. And Mesfin, his name is Mesfin. David, Sherry, and Mesfin, the three peacemakers.
Good.
And Sherry's the mother of nations. She's representing the mother of nations, the woman who brought the peacemaker into her home and nurtured him and recognized what he was bringing as something important as he set out on his journey to the tribes. And David and Mesfin is Hiawatha and the peacemaker. So those are the three folks.
It's actually the famous Hiawatha story.
Yeah. So there's three branches of government. We won't go into this in detail because we want to get through this, but there were three branches of government like ours, and the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And the judicial branch was the clan mothers. And
judicial branch.
yeah,
So they were like the Supreme Court.
they're like the Supreme Court. They got to veto, they had veto power over war and the power to nominate the chiefs and pull the chiefs if they weren't acting according to their hearts and for the betterment of the people. They could just get pulled if they went into ego or into any kind of behaviors that weren't in alignment with this great law. So here's Oren Lyons speaking about democracy.
So in our Iroquois perception, all life is equal. And that includes the birds, animals, things that grow, things that swim. All life is equal in our perception. And that is from Oren Lyons, who is Onondaga,
Yeah.
I think.
And so here we're going to get into the evolutionary leap in consciousness. So yeah, we just did that story and we're just moving right along.
Well, that's some background. Now we're going to go big picture, right? We're going to zoom way out into, we've looked at this little thing that happened on this little planet. And yet it was a very big thing on a planet that may yet have something to offer the entire universe. So as our evolving species, which a good term for it, I think, is humanity 2.0. It's a new version. We've tried all of these things in the past, and we've done a lot of beautiful things. We've done a lot of not so beautiful things. We've learned a lot. Now, what if we can integrate all of what we've learned and open our hearts and move into a new phase of our actual species?
And we believe that has to do with moving into a higher frequency, which we'll get into. So yeah, humanity 2.0, the evolutionary leap in consciousness, which is what this particular conference is all about. And so we feel that the fully evolved human manifests the best features of all previous cultures.
We are part of nature, not above it, aware of the scientific perspective, yet not ruled by it, tuned into a higher reality, yet fully present in the world.
And a synthesis occurs, which brings forth something that has never been on the planet before. It's an expanded paradigm of quantum physics. Now, Andrew's our science guy, and he can bring in a little more about all this science that we're going to go into briefly. But the important thing is, for me, is that it opens our hearts so we can align with the indigenous worldview. Quantum reality informs and illuminates the Western paradigm, expands our understanding of the nature of the universe, which allows us to align with the indigenous worldview. Because one thing I wanted to add to this is we're calling this stuff that we're trying to get colonialism out of our minds and thoughts. Well, I think that colonialism is really based on an outdated scientific paradigm. I think we should be going for the paradigm that drove the colonialism, the behavior of the colonists, because this is a world out of balance. And why is it out of balance? It's out of balance because of our paradigm, the paradigm that's driven us, not the results of the paradigm, which is what we're calling colonialism, which is using and abusing Mother Earth, separation, scarcity, all those things that drove that colonial paradigm. So I wanted to throw that in. I just came up with that last night, I think. So we have in quantum science, and we're going to quickly go through this.
So what does quantum science, quantum physics have to do with consciousness, with the human experience? So two things come to mind. One of them is this phenomenon called quantum entanglement, which means that everything, the word they use is entangled. Everything is entangled, connected, intimately, permanently connected with every other thing. Every electron in this universe is connected with every other electron. My consciousness is connected with your consciousness and your consciousness. We are, in that biggest sense, one. You've heard of oneness, of unity consciousness. We are profoundly interconnected despite this compelling illusion of separation. So that's the oneness of creation. Quantum science points us there.
And it's even going to be beyond interconnected to we are one consciousness. There is only one consciousness, and we are manifestations of that.
Yeah.
So it's going, science is moving along in its ability to prove this oneness of all. And one thing we wanted to bring up that's so important, if you don't walk away from this with anything else, we'd like you to walk away with the observer effect.
So the second phenomenon of quantum physics, the first one was quantum entanglement, the interconnectedness of everything. The second one that's relevant to our experience of consciousness is the observer effect, which in a nutshell says that until there's an observer, nothing exists. Everything is potential. You may have heard of the wave and the particle. So these waves of potential are proceeding through space and time forever, and nothing gels into this current reality until something observes it. That can be me, it can be you, it can be a mouse. Einstein loved that. That was Einstein's question. He says, oh yeah, the mouse.
The mouse.
The mouse. Or even a machine. This is what's interesting, is if we're observing it using human created measuring devices, those are simply machines, but they also have the same effect.
Wow.
So once there's an observer, we now have that. This is how reality comes into being. This is wild. I mean, when this first came up, scientists were throwing their arms up in despair and saying, good heavens, this makes no sense at all. It's fascinating.
But guess what? It gives us power.
Mm.
Once we understand our power of creating reality, that we created this whole thing with our consciousness and with our attention, where we put our attention. And we have a book that we'll talk about, but we say we create reality with the power of our consciousness. And there are 7 aspects of our consciousness that relate to this observer effect, because it has to do with vibration and frequency. It's pure physics, because we live in a conscious universe.
And not just a conscious universe.
But a conscious loving universe.
And not just a conscious loving universe.
But a conscious loving abundant universe.
There, we said it.
We said it. So here it is, a conscious loving universe.
This extraordinary phenomenon of which we are a part. And it's all vibration, which is just energy. We are simply energy, and that energy can come together into form, and form is what we are. I'm here in this body, Connie's here in this body, you're here in that body, and we think we're separate, but it's just this we know that doesn't last forever. This is this sort of temporary agreement among these particles to come together and stay in this form.
Yeah, and remember what Wallace Black Elk said. The mother and the father are love. It's all love. So we are love incarnate.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I love it.
Love it. Love it. And so here we go. We can choose our frequency.
So here's the question. As conscious beings, what does that mean? Like, how do we come to understand this incredible gift, this power that we have been given, that we are? So we're this, I am a vibrating electromagnetic being, and I have powers, superpowers. For example, I can choose my frequency. And this is to do with feelings and emotions. On the one hand, there's this whole sliding scale of frequency. At the highest frequency, I'm in this state of joy and beauty and bliss. At the lowest scale on that spectrum, I'm at some sort of state of despair, of fear. It's all about the difference between fear on the lower hand and trust at the highest level.
Yeah, and guess what? The laws in the different frequencies are different. We are bringing that to the party, that the laws are expanded in the different frequencies as you go up in frequency. And Nassim Haramein was just speaking about this recently, that as you go up in frequency, you actually access more information. And they're finding that information is the energy of the universe and the black holes and all that. So we need to catch up a little with our PowerPoint and bring that stuff in, because it's so cool that this is breaking news, folks.
Now, unless you think we are making this stuff up, here is a 150-year-old piece of writing by one of America's greatest philosophers and
ecologists.
Ecologist, ethnologist. He studied the Native Americans, and he famously, his name is Henry David Thoreau, and he famously did a retreat for 2 years and 2 days and 2 months and 2 days in a little cabin on Walden Pond in present-day Massachusetts. And when he emerged from his retreat, he said this. He said, "I learned this, at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind, will pass an invisible boundary. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him, or the old laws will be expanded and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings."
Okay, folks.
So we didn't make this stuff up.
We didn't make this stuff up.
That's kind of a summary of everything we're talking about.
Yeah, old Henry, he was a mystic, and he saw what the native people could see, and he studied them because he wanted to know what their experiences were. And he experienced the oneness of all creation. And he got this, that when we trust, when we walk in confidence, we will pass a boundary and we will have more liberal laws establishing themselves around and within us, or the old laws will be expanded and interpreted in our favor in a more liberal sense. And we can live with the license of a higher order of beings. So that's what this conference is about. How do we get there? Well, guess what? We have to trust. We have to come together in trust. And here's Wallace Black Elk, who is going to talk a little about that.
So, grandfather, it is the doubt that has created the reality that we live in now, and it has we're unable to understand other realities that and the knowings that you have about the real nature of the universe. It's this doubt that has been the problem from the beginning.
Yes, it was told that pollution begins in the mind. For having a doubt against a creature, so first, second, or third, that doubt will visit you. So we're in the third generation, and so we could see that doubt is here. So that doubt goes around in the universe of mind. Then what it does, it casts shadow of fear. So everything turned wild.
Because we have choice, is it too late to change the course?
No, we got one more to go yet. Remember, 4 times. And the 4th time, I'm going to come back and I'm going to check up on you guys. So we got a little ways to go yet. So we already passed 3 and we got 1 more to go. So we still have little time left. So that's why we're here. We're going to take every split second and to tell each other that we should all come back together. We still have that chance. So we have to come back and try to understand the fire, the rock, the water, and green. And then once we all understand, it has to be unanimous. Now we're going to escape from our own self-destruction. so the whole world will turn green again, and we could live here forever. We have to stop abusing. Then for doing so, they say if we put that part back, they say as soon as you touch the earth, there'll be a flash of light and canopy the whole universe, and all the sickness that are incurable would be destroyed, not people. And even our dead will resurrect from death. So it'll be total victory. So it is possible that we could regain what we lost. This is the way we were told. Every step you take is a prayer. You have to live with it, walk with it. Not just say, a bunch of young Americans walk across the street and back to beer joints and play golf and win a roast and marshmallow. It's not that way. You have to live, walk with it. Mm-hmm. Your life. Yeah. You have to walk because Tagashla is watching you. Mm-hmm. And with this power here, that will is in you. That Chanimpa is you.
So thank you, grandfather. He was such a special friend of mine for so long. So in the conscious, loving universe, we trust. Here we have it. In God we trust. We are one on our dollar bills. So just know there's a divine destiny that we're playing out right now in the United States of America. And as we walk in trust, in the trust frequency, we've written a book called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. In the trust frequency, trust replaces fear. Ease replaces struggle. Generosity replaces hoarding. Abundance replaces scarcity. Unity replaces separation.
New systems develop. New relationships replace outmoded ways of being. An understanding of the interconnectedness and sacredness of all things emerges.
It is in this way that true peace and profound freedom will come to prevail on earth. And we take an evolutionary leap in consciousness to a higher way of seeing. We trust, we understand our oneness, we get it, the veil thins, and we become and know that we are one. We open our heart, we choose to walk in total trust, and we realize the true American dream. And here we have the handshake of 1621 between the Mayflower Pilgrims and the Wampanoag chief Massasoit to symbolize what is lying ahead for us as we come together in our hearts.
It is time to move forward.
Actually, that's me saying something.
There's a video. Do you want to do that?
Why not? Then let's see, because we're almost at the end. Here we go.
It is time to move forward. It is time to take the inspiration of the intercultural syntheses of the first 50 years of peace and friendship modeled by Plymouth Colony and the melding of the great law of the Iroquois into the Constitution to the next level. It is time to respect, honor, and understand the American Indian point of view and way of life. It is time to welcome the visionary Indian to the table through an open-hearted and open-minded invitation to sit in council together and explore how we are going to realize the principles and ideals so treasured by the founders of this nation, the American Indian, and by all people who dream of bringing universal liberty, equality, and justice from the realm of possibility into actualization. It is time for a third great synthesis.
I believe that if the Indians and the white man would sit down and talk, it would be a much better world.
It has to come from the heart, from the spirit, from the mind of people of conscience.
There's only one creator, which is leading us all. And that's what makes us all one.
When that reconciliation catches fire, it will jump the oceans.
We do have to take care of Mother Earth and clean up our ways and respect one another and love one another. That's all it takes.
See the day, because it starts with you and it starts with me, and it has begun this moment, and nothing will stop it, because this sacred spirit fire wants to heal the entire human race, and it shall be done.
And it shall be done.
So be
We
it.
are one, 2020. And we'll just close with a little quote from our Aborigine friends.
We are all visitors to this time, this place. We are just passing through. Our purpose here is to observe, to learn, to grow to love, and
We return home.
then to return home.
And then our last with the Bushmen of the Kalahari.
And remember, I'm wearing this, which I bought from these folks in the Kalahari.
And I'm wearing a heart made from the quahog shell,
All right.
honoring our indigenous people, our Wampanoag and Iroquois and East Coast Native people who used the quahog for their wampum belts and all their, which held their visions and communications.
So here's a message to you from the Bushmen of the Kalahari. Open your heart to others. When you do so, you will feel our spirit. It will make you dance, and it will make you happy. And then you too will be a Bushman.
Yes, we are one. So this is the beginning of...
It's not the end, it's the beginning.
It's the beginning of what these three peacemakers are dreaming of for the future of humanity as we create a new blueprint for a new way of being. Yeah. And we're just so grateful to be here.
And we truly trust that some of these words we've just shared with you will contribute to that, contribute to your personal growth, your heart, your understanding, and to the big picture as we, the people, evolve into our next phase of evolution.
Yes, so thank you so much. It's great being here, and we hope that we've given you some insights, a new way of seeing and being and thinking, so we can lift up like the Hiawatha condolence ceremony that the Peacemaker brought. May we all release our trauma, experience it and release it, and let's go forward together in our hearts to a new way of being. In a higher frequency where there's more abundance, balance, beauty, joy than we can fathom. We can't even fathom it. We've just got to let it come in and act accordingly in total trust together.
Thank you, Connie and Andrew, for the beautiful sharing that you gave. And I'm very happy to hear about it. What you presented is because the new frequency, what you said, is exactly the blueprint that we're creating. So it is in total alignment. The blueprint itself is just a physical manifestation of the frequency. It is not, it's not the frequency itself, it's a guidance to manifest the frequency. So this blueprint that we're co-creating together, everyone co-creating together from around the world, will be placed into a new constitution. It's called our Mother Earth Constitution. It's a constitution for the Earth, and it's enacted through universal contract law. So if two parties agree to live by these principles, it becomes the law. And often private contracts actually supersede constitutions because it's private contract between parties. Often you see in a contract, it's a private party between two parties, but we actually allow the jurisdiction, say, where will we choose the jurisdiction to be? Sometimes a lot of people choose a jurisdiction internally through arbitration, but sometimes they give it to outside third party for jurisdiction. So, but if we have this constitution under universal contract law and we have our own tribunal, then we'll resolve the disputes among basically each other. So by bringing that blueprint and putting in constitution, it becomes the guiding principles for the future of humanity.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we're thrilled to be a part of it, to bring our essence, our ideas, what we've brought in over our lifetimes. It's really been lifetimes, both of us. So how many years, the two of us? Several 150 some odd years.
Don't give away how old we are.
And also one thing is that you also open my eyes to the news. There's a different story that there's different stories of the landing of the Pilgrims and situations, and it gives me a new perspective of how small they were, because often we hear about the Spanish conquistas coming in huge battleship, but the Mayflower was a different. There were different people, and they had a different mentality. Was different, because so often people get mixed up with the different parties that were landing on the shores of the New World, or what we call US or North America. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was totally unexpected,
Great. That's wonderful, David.
Yeah, our right to live according to our conscience. Our direct connection to the divine. That's what the Mayflower Pilgrims were seeking, to build a culture based on that. And they met with the Native Americans who lived that way, that direct connection. So, and now you're bringing it in now with this, with what you're doing from the energies, from the frequency, you're bringing in that direct divine connection. So we carry on the evolutionary upward spiral.
Yes, thank you so much for creating. We'll sure be working closer together for this. And you've been working a lot longer than I have, but we'll combine all the energies.
Yeah, we're older, David.
Yeah, we got a few years on you, but man, it's the energies that are coming through. It's who's listening. Doesn't matter where you are on the planet, when you're on the planet. If you're tuned in, it has to do with what frequency you're bringing in, what radio frequency you're tuned into, to what information you get, and then it's a matter of living it. That's what's up. Like you say, it's boots on the ground. How do we live it? So thank you for the work you're doing. Amazing, all these people you've brought together for this process.
We look forward to watching the rest of this extraordinary unfoldment that you're presenting, David.
Thank you. This is just the beginning, like you said, at the end of the slide, just the beginning.
It's the beginning.
The beginning, yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Alice?
great.